Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Can you all hear me? Somebody give me a thumbs up if you're hearing what I'm saying. Excellent. And you can see my screen should have a picture of fantastic pulpit rock in Norway. You guys can all see that. And I apologize. I'm watching myself in the video and looking at my shirt. And if I'd have realized that my shirt would have been so funky on the camera, I would have worn a different shirt today. But so try not to look at that. Let's look at the presentation. So today we're going to talk about, as part of this is our third webinar in our series about building world-class safety cultures and the steps that are taken or the elements that are involved in things like that. And today we're going to talk about risk readiness and management and how we can proactively protect people and the process and the performance of the company or the operation. Just some general risk tools that I've used over the course of my career and have been exposed to with other people. Hopefully this will provide you some suggestions and some things that you can do. Certainly if you have comments, I'd encourage you to unmute and jump in or raise your hand, and I'll call on you as we go through this. So this will be great. Get in the right spot here. All right, so as we talked about in the first of the webinar series, there's really kind of 5 columns or 5 pillars of things that we can do in order to create that. We talked about employee engagement or team member involvement. This month we're talking about risk, and then next month and the following months we'll go over communications, inspections, and observations. In my opinion, these 5 columns or these 5 elements, any company that can do these better will have a better safety performance when it comes. So just a reminder, today we're going to focus on risk, okay? And again, this is a picture of that same place, Pulpit Rock. It's from the other side, different angle, and according to their website, if you go search for them, they claim that they have over 200,000 visitors per year to this particular rock over the top of the fjord here, and that nobody's ever accidentally fallen off. And what's one of the things that you notice about that is that there is no handrail, there's no fence, there's no guard, anything else like that around that. And so to me, that's an amazing thing. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. I've never been there. It's on my bucket list of maybe things to go and see at some point in the future. But you got people that have access right up to the edge, and yet, according to their website, they claim that no one's fallen off. I want to talk a little bit about how we get people to be the strongest link in the safety chain, not the weakest link, right? So in the past, as things have developed in safety and health, we've always tried to talk about how we're going to engineer, or we're going to make something so that people don't get hurt. And while I'm certainly not saying that those things are not important. I want to do everything that we can to ensure that people don't get hurt. Sometimes it's more practical to take the different approach, and let's make sure that people are prepared and ready to respond to risk. And, for example, if you're not wanting to fall off the edge of this rock, then don't get right up next to the edge. I mean, we can all take proactive things. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of these today. I thought in order to start things off and get people thinking, maybe have a little bit of fun to begin with, I would show you. I've been I do a lot of traveling. I've gone to a lot of places, and I've started this collection of different signs that I see around the world and in different places. And I'm going to show you a few of my favorites today, especially as the ones that relate to risk. So this first one, I love this sign. I found this, by the way, this was on a cruise ship. You can see this was on a Royal Caribbean. Interesting place to put this sign. This sign was right up on the top deck next to the rail. No running, jumping, catapulting, pole vaulting, or teleportation. Maybe they're being a little fun to get people to pay attention to it, but you think about running and jumping next to the rail or the edge of the ship might be a great place for us to not do those kind of things. And from a risk perspective, we don't want somebody to fall overboard based on goofing around, jumping, running, doing all of that other kind of stuff. So this is to me a classic sign. Somebody's recognizing some risk and trying to prompt some behavior from people that are in that situation or there. This one came from a beach or a place in Florida next to the ocean, on the Atlantic Ocean, on the Atlantic coast of Florida. I love what it says here at the bottom. The whole sign says, look, there's all these hazards that are out here that could cause, that have resulted in injury and death. It's not can cause your injury and death. They have resulted in injury and death. Use caution, be alert. And then it says your safety depends upon your own good judgment. Well, that's kind of the point of what risk preparedness and risk readiness really means. I mean, we all have the responsibility of how we're going to handle risky situations or places where we could get hurt or maybe seriously hurt. And so how is it that we get, and I'll be interested to hear some discussion. We'll open this up for some comments in a little while, but how is it that we get our team members or our employees or others to buy into this business of let's watch out for each other and let's watch out for the risks that we've got, think through what we're going to do. And we'll talk about some tools that I've used here in a minute. Just got a couple of more signs to show you. This one I found in Hawaii on the island of Maui, a blowhole off the edge of the sea. And I just love this sign. I know it's a little bit hard to see on the PowerPoint in the presentation, but warning, stay clear of blowhole. Then it tells us you can get sucked in and killed. And then the part that's difficult to read across the bottom, it's not a water park. Kind of makes me laugh when I think about what would have caused somebody to put up a sign like that. And sometimes people, I think, not realizing the hazard or thinking that they're better than the hazard, maybe they're 6'2" and bulletproof, take extraordinary risks when we shouldn't. And so teaching people, teaching our team members in order to help them make those good judgments when it comes to risk is an important thing. Here's a sign that I took a picture of just a day before yesterday when I was out for a walk. There's a little stream that runs past my house. The stream is probably 4 foot wide at the most, and it's probably 3 inches deep. I'm not sure that you'd even get your pants wet if you wanted to walk across this stream, but it's interesting. About every 30 feet, every 50 feet along the edge of this stream, there's one of these signs. Please stay out of the stream. It's unsafe, and it may cause liner damage or other damage. So again, another sign that I've found out here pointing out, helping people to recognize and then respond, hopefully appropriately, to risk that's presented. This was a sign that I took at Capitol Reef National Park last fall when we were hiking the Hickman Bridge Trail. It's a beautiful trail. There's a natural arch at the end of this. It's just stunningly beautiful. But I thought this was an interesting sign as I was out looking at photos or as I was out doing this walk. Again, some common things on this: no stopping on the trail for the next 500 feet because of a rock fall hazard. Well, okay, so that reduces risk if I don't stop because I'm not standing under something that could fall on me. But what am I going to do if the rocks fall while I'm walking by? Have I got a plan in my head? Then, of course, it brings us back to what we've heard in others and seen in other signs, which is your safety is your responsibility, enter at your own risk. You need to take care of the things that you're going to do. So again, I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts when we open this up for conversation in a few minutes about how is it that we get people to really assess their risk and then take appropriate actions. Of course, my favorite sign is a sign that my son took a picture of and sent to me. At first, you don't succeed. Try doing what Brian me told you to do the first time. That's probably, I don't know if that's a good risk mitigation strategy, but certainly is one that I put in there and one that I remind my kids regularly. If you didn't do it, if it didn't work, go back and do it the way I told you to do it. All right, so all kidding aside, let's talk a little bit about pre-task risk assessments. This is, and I apologize for kind of the word salads that we've got. Most of my slides today are a lot of them have a lot of words on them. I try not to do that usually, but there's some stuff that I would like to put out there for us to think about, right? So pre-task risk assessment, simple, something to go through, a mental exercise that if you ask yourself these 3 important questions, you can prevent injury. And I've seen these used in a variety of different ways. A variety of different companies have different slogans or different slogans or logos or different acronyms that support it. I believe MSHA has one called SLAM, Stop, Look, analyze and manage. When I worked for ArcelorMittal, we had one called STEP, stop, think, evaluate, plan. I know that Kennecott, Utah Copper has one called track. There's several of them in different companies that I've been around and worked around. They all drive to the same thing, and at the root of all of these, they all come down to asking yourself three questions. What am I about to do? How could I get hurt or hurt someone else while I'm doing this? And what will I do to prevent it? So let me give you a couple of examples of things like this that have helped me and help me probably prevent injury. And as I've taught these to other folks, um, I've seen some really important things and seen people change the way. And if you can just get in the habit yourself, I mean, we do thousands and thousands of things every day at work and at home, and as we're out and about, many of them have a certain hazard that could really cause us some damage if we're conscious about it. You know, one of the greatest things about being a human is that our brains have this great ability to process and to take care of things subconsciously. We don't have to raise every decision that we make, or every thought that we have doesn't necessarily come to a conscious level. Unfortunately, sometimes when we get in that automatic mode, we can get ourselves in trouble. You think about if you've ever gotten in a car and driven for an hour or two, you don't even remember the drive when you get there. You don't remember the things that you saw because you were thinking about other things. And it's pretty easy for us to check out. So the idea of a pre-task risk assessment is to help us figure out what I can do. I'll give you an example of this. So I have uh, I have 5 sons, and each of them have learned to drive cars in the last 20 or 15 years. And the demographic that the National Safety Council tells us is that, you know, the highest killer of young men between the age of 15 and 25 are car crashes. And of course, we all know that in the United States, there's about 5,000 people per year that get killed at work, but there are 50,000 people a year that get killed in auto crashes alone in the United States. So 10 times the rate of workplace fatalities. And you look at the amount of effort that we put into preventing fatalities at work, it would be amazing if we could see some of that same thought process carried forward when it comes to getting on the road. But um, one of the things that I've done with my sons as they've learned how to drive is to kind of force this pre-task risk assessment. So when they come to borrow the keys to my car after they got their driver's license, I always ask them, so where are you going? What are you doing? And then I ask them, what are you going to do to prevent a car crash while you're driving? And I won't give them the keys until they tell me 3 to 5 things that they're going to do. So the conversation might go as, well, I'm going to wear my seatbelt. I'm going to make sure that everybody else in my car wears their seatbelt. I'm going to put my cell phone in the glove box. I'm not going to adjust the radio while I'm driving. I'm going to use my signals. I'm going to make sure that I maintain at least 4 seconds behind the car in front of me, and I'm going to move my eyes around through the mirrors quite regularly so I can make sure that I'm controlling anybody behind me and adjusting my space for people in front of me in case somebody is following me too closely. We're going to make sure that we don't overload the car. We're going to, if the roads are slippery, we're going to slow down and lengthen our following distance. There's a whole bunch of different behaviors that we can do if we bring that driving behavior to the top of consciousness and think about it. And so I might challenge you tonight that while you're on your way home or when you're ready to go home for the day and you get in your car, just ask yourself, what am I about to do? I'm about to drive. Now, if you're here in the Salt Lake Valley, the weather looks like it's pretty nice today. The roads are going to be dry. But ask yourself, how could I get hurt while driving home tonight? What could cause me to be involved in a crash? And what am I going to do to prevent some sort of injury? So before I move on to other things when it comes to kind of pre-task risk assessments, does anybody on the call have a story or an experience that they could share about, or their thoughts about a pre-task risk assessment, just getting their people to ask those 3 simple questions? Anybody like to jump in? Feel free to unmute and just jump in. I think you should be able to unmute. If not, send me something in the chat and I'll take it on. Right, well, I see that I've got a bunch of shy folks. Don't be shy. Let's have some good conversation. I'll move on, but be thinking about how we can talk about some of this. Okay. So a tool that I've also used that also goes hand in hand, it's probably a little bit more than just a pre-task risk assessment, is a tool that I've discovered, and some people on this call have helped me with the development of this. And it's not just me. I can't take credit for owning this. This is some stuff that I saw at a seminar once with some really smart people about risk. But for a lot of years there was a lot of risk matrices that were put out there, and people were trying to figure out probability and then outcomes and likelihoods and all of those kind of things, and it got really complicated. And this friend of mine came up with this as an easy way to help people understand risk, and it can be used as a go no go too. So if you want to formalize that pre-task risk assessment, if you want somebody to write their pre-task risk assessment down so that you can keep track of it, you can see what people are seeing, this might be something that you could put on the back of the card where people are writing this down. Let me show you how this works. You start off over here on the left-hand side, and you look through these. What is the chance of something going wrong? What's the chance of an incident happening when we're doing this work, right? So the range happens every time we do this job, something goes wrong, we have an incident, to all the way down to I've never heard of an incident happening while we're doing this job. You start there, and we're going to select today one of these. What you do is you draw a line from the circle that's next to wherever you think the chance is to how often do you do this task. Is it something that's done seldomly, or is it something that we're doing daily or continuously? So let's draw a line on here from whatever it is that we're doing. We recognize that an incident can happen. We draw a line through our task frequency to monthly, and then you extend that line out here to this center vertical line that's in the middle of this little risk tool. Okay. Then you ask yourself, what could be the result of this incident? Is it going to be something like a first aid? Is it going to be a medical treatment kind of an injury? Is it restricted duty, lost time, a serious injury or fatality, or illness or fatality? On this side, these were some dollar amounts as far as equipment damage goes. So we say that we do this, we know that an incident can happen, we do the job monthly, and if the incident did happen, perhaps it would take us to the serious. So that puts us in a relatively low risk category, but it tells us out here to the right what it is that we need to do. Follow the procedure, or a JHA or JSA if that's what you have at your site. And it becomes a really great tool for helping people make a good decision, because you see, if we end up here somewhere like a very high risk, you want to get your safety and health professional involved with it. If it's not quite as high, you might ask a team leader. Of course, if it's something that's very low, you could just proceed with caution, making sure that you're paying attention to whatever those exposures are. So those are all things that can be done. It's a quick little tool. Feel free to, when I publish this, you can take a look at it on the web and come up with your own way of doing it. One thing that I like to point out here with my teams is that anytime that I have a risk above a 6, or with companies that I work with, or places where I've done interventions here, anytime that you have a risk higher than a 6, then we want to really invoke stop work obligation. This was something that was really important at a company that I worked for in the past. A lot of people talk about stop work authority. We give everybody the permission and the authority to stop work, but do we really convince them, or do we talk to people about, you have that not only the authority and the permission to stop work if something's not right and safe, that you have the obligation to do it. It's a moral obligation to make sure that we don't allow things to continue forward that can either get yourself or other people hurt. Okay, so any questions about kind of a pre-task risk assessment, or something that goes along with maybe a little bit more formal, like this little risk tool that we've got? Of course, you can also use JHAs. So I'll open the floor up. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to share at this point?
This is Genevieve here from Salt Lake City.
Hi.
I think this is great. Do you have a template you could share of this risk assessment?
Yes, absolutely. So in a couple of days, I'll publish this, and if you'll just send me an email to Brian, I'll put it up on the last slide. But if you'll just send an email to Brian, bryan.hogan, HOGGAN at argoshe.com, I'll be happy to share a copy of this template with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, let's move on and talk a little bit. So this chart that I'm showing you here comes from a book that was written by Tom Krause and Kristen Bell back in 10 years ago in 2015. It seems like it was just yesterday. It doesn't seem like it's that old. But they did a study of several large industries from the period of 1993 through 2012. So a 20-year period. These were big companies like Macerk in the shipping, Archer Daniels Midland, and others like them. A couple of mining companies and maybe some oil companies as well were involved in this. And they looked at over 300,000 incidents over that 20-year period. And one of the things that they discovered when they were going through these injuries is that a lot of our effort, and you can get their book. It's called 7 Insights into Safety Leadership. There's a link available on my website if you want to go out, and you can buy it from Amazon, or you can just go out to Amazon and just search for it. It's the 7 Insights into Safety Leadership. And you can see this chart and a couple other charts that they put together. But one of the things that they noticed is that the orange line across the bottom, which is the fatalities, the number of fatalities per 100,000 people in the United States, over that 20-year period did not have as steep of decline. In fact, if you start to look at it a lot, you can see that there's not been really much decline in that fatalities line, but the non-fatal injury line has had a pretty dramatic improvement over that 20-year period. And so they started asking questions as to why that would happen. Why is it that we're seeing a pretty dramatic decrease in the number of injuries? Well, they went back to the old Frank Bird pyramid, the 1, 10, 300 pyramid that says that if, for every serious or fatal accident that you have 10 minor injuries, you have 300 equipment damages or 300 near misses. That's technology that came out in 1939, I believe. So it's been around for a long time. And for a long period of time, safety professionals, me included, being one of them, really preached and practiced the method that if you go out and eliminate all of your near misses on the bottom of this pyramid, somehow magically you're going to eliminate the fatalities and the serious injuries at the top. Well, this study that they looked at, number one, asked a couple of questions. The first one was, are the ratios still a valid ratio? And yes, they actually validated that the ratios of the 1, 10, 300 or whatever, 130, 300, whatever ratio it is that you like on that, depending on which author you're reading, those ratios tend to pretty much stay true. Even, almost 100 years after Frank Bird did that original research. But what they discovered is that a lot of effort gets put into taking care of and dealing with minor injuries or that don't have the potential of resulting in a serious injury or fatality. And that's where the discussion has started about serious injuries and fatalities, or potential serious injuries and fatalities. Some places call them PSIFs. Some places you'll hear them called high potentials, all of those kind of things. What they did discover is that only about 21% of the near misses at the bottom of the table, or anyway up in the bottom of the pyramid, actually have the potential of resulting in a serious injury or fatality. Now, I, in my career, have defined serious injuries and fatalities are life altering. I think I've got that on this next slide right here. This is a critical risk, but is the risk that has that life altering or fatal outcome. Life altering would be things like severe burns, loss of an eye, an amputation, permanent disability of a body part, things like that that make it impossible for people to maintain style of life or their life in the way that it has before the incident. So long story short, Tom Krause and Kristen Bell in their book helped to start and kick off this discussion about critical risk and critical risk management. And so critical risk is something that's defined. It has the specific precursors, and high hazard, it has a combination of things that are happening in the workforce and people focusing on and having their mind engaged in their work. It has to do with high hazard work, and it has to do with controls that we have in place for all of those things. And then what really defines what critical risk is, what the magnitude of harm is when the incident happens. And so this is the definition of critical risk. It's a special kind of risk management that's kind of new in the health and safety world over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. And certainly important for us to look at what are the things that can seriously go wrong. Now, why would I throw this in here in a conversation about risk management? Well, I know that a lot of safety and health professionals, and I know that a lot of corporate leaders want to go out there and they talk about great things like eliminating all risk, and they want to prevent all incidents. And I fully support and agree with that. I would never suggest that having any injury or incident is trivial. Having said that, if my resources are limited, and I can't think of a company I've ever worked with or for that didn't have some sort of limit on their resources when it comes to safety and health, if I have to make a choice as to where I'm going to put my efforts in the work that I'm going to do, why don't I take a look at the ones that have the most likelihood of having a serious injury or fatality? So an example of that would be maybe I've got a near miss that happens where you got 4 or 5 people in a car and the car slides off the side of the road. I don't know that that would necessarily count as a near miss because they slid off the road, but maybe the roads are slippery and the driver fails to recognize that at first, manages to control it. Nothing bad happens, even though maybe they slid through a stop sign or something. Fortunately, there was no other car there. There wasn't a crash or anything else like that. So we would call that perhaps a near miss. That could be one incident that happens. Another incident that happens is a guy's trying to remove a zip tie from a box or from a wire harness or something like that, using the wrong tool for the job, like a pocket knife, slices open his finger and results in 3 stitches in his finger. So this is the concept of the magnitude of the harm when the incident happens. So if my maximum worst outcome is that I would have 3 or 4 stitches in my finger versus a maximum worst outcome of having somebody collide with my car and cause multiple fatalities, it seems to me logical to make sure that we would put all of our effort in preventing the car crash, more so than focusing our resources and efforts on the things where the maximum worst outcome is something that's not serious or fatal. So some thoughts about that. You know, every plant, every operation has things that could be critical risks. And you should ask yourself, if you're going to go visit an operation or a plant, or if you have responsibility for managing the safety at one of those things, let's start off pretty easily. You know, sometimes people want to try and eat the elephant all in one bite. It makes it difficult to get it done if you want to do kind of a stem to stern thing. I found it to be a much more easy and also much more effective if I just say, I want to take a look at the first 3 critical risks that I have at this plant. So here's an example of a place that I worked where they put together what their critical risks were. And some of you may recognize this stuff. Some of you on this call helped contribute to creating this list. But if I go to a plant or if I go to an operation, here's 20 examples of things that could seriously injure me or kill me. And wouldn't it be great if when we're having our pre-task risk assessment, or if when we're having a team safety meeting, or whether we're doing a pre-job briefing as to what we're going to do, we could talk about, hey, these are the critical risks that we're going to deal with today. It could be something like weather and heat stress. It could be chemical incompatibilities. It could be lifting operations. Recently, I was in Southern California working with a customer of mine when they were cleaning out some wells. They had a workover rig in there, And I was amazed at the amount of times that people had to actually get underneath a suspended load on a crane to tighten bolts or to do other things. And we spent some time in the safety meeting talking about how we were going to control that, how we could do those operations closer to the ground where people wouldn't have to be underneath a suspended load. And the team really got involved with us. And so one of our critical risks at that particular job was lifting stuff. So I guess my challenge for you, or the thing that I would want you to consider and think about, would be what you need to do is spend some time thinking about what are the 3 things at this site during this operation that I could do or that we could be doing that could expose us to something that would be really causing a serious injury or fatality. And then go back to the 3 questions. What am I about to do? How could I get hurt while doing it? And what are we going to do to prevent that from happening? And so if we take those critical risks and we start to develop a register, that gets us into this program of critical risk management. Again, notice on here in this definition, it's a proactive leadership-driven approach. We want to identify and control and monitor those high consequence risks that have the potential of fatalities or life-altering injuries. Critical risk management focuses on critical tasks and exposures where failure just can't happen. I mean, how many times is it okay for the airplane to land without putting its wheels down, right? I think we need to have a plan in place to make sure that before we land the airplane that the wheels are down and in place. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts about risk and risk readiness and risk preparedness. I know that the tools that I've shared with you today are can be really life-changing and important. One time when I first started doing this, my oldest son was about 8 years old, and we had put together our little pre-task risk assessment. I'd taken it out to work and we taught everybody. And it turns out that his Cub Scout leader was a person that worked out at the same place. So I was at home working on, we had our little card about how to do our pre-task risk assessment, and we had talked about it and shown everybody how to use it. And I was at home replacing the dishwasher in our house. Our dishwasher had gone bad. And one of the problems with that, with the old dishwasher and the new dishwasher, was they didn't connect to the plumbing in the same place. But they both used copper tubing. What I didn't have was a copper tubing cutter, and more importantly, I didn't have the tool that would bend the end of the copper tubing so that you could put it back in the new dishwasher. And I've got about 2.5 feet more copper tubing than what I need. So the genius that I was, I decided what I was going to do is bend that copper tubing around some of the other plumbing and stuff and do nice gentle bends in the curve and get it to where I could get it back there. Having too much was better than having not enough, because I couldn't stretch it, but I could certainly bend that copper gently around so that the dishwater feed water. So, when you get it installed in the house, you're working with about 6 inches of space underneath there. And I'm laying on my shoulders, on my side, underneath the dishwasher, trying to bend this around. And pretty soon, well, you can tell that it was pretty frustrating for me. I was getting a little aggravated at trying to get this to work. Wasn't going really great. Pretty soon, here comes my oldest son, my 8-year-old kid, Cub Scout, tapping me on the shoulder and hands me my copy of my own work, the little pre-task risk assessment checklist card that we'd handed out at work. Turns out his Cub Scout leader thought that was good information to share. And so he brought it home from work and he shared it with the Cub Scouts. And here's my son handing me the thing, tapping me on the shoulder, and also handing me a pair of safety glasses. And one of those times where I wanted to both hug and hug my son, and then maybe not some nice things at the same time, being frustrated with the work that was going on there. Again, real important tools, real important things. I think it can be something that can be useful. I encourage you to teach risk assessment, risk management, risk readiness to everybody that you work with, your team members, I think your spouses, your children, your grandchildren, whoever. We can teach people to deal with risk, then we can go a long way in reducing pain and suffering. So with that, that's the end of the presentation as far as the risk readiness and risk management goes. I'd like to open up the floor. If anybody's got great stories about how something like this has worked for you, or if you got any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them at this time. Feel free to take yourself off of mute. You should be able to do that, and then happy to share. Also, if you'd like, you can put stuff in the chat. I see that we've got one chat that says we've created a MS Forms tool that our employees have on their mobile phones that takes them through a SLAM exercise. Then we randomly select SLAM submitted during the month and awards employees with gift cards. That's a great idea, a great way to get people encouraged and engaged in participating in the program. Thanks, Dell, for sharing that. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to just throw up here a couple of ways that you can get in touch with us at Argo SH&E. So we've got 3 more webinars in the series. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a web page where you can sign up for the webinars. You'll also be able to go back and look at previous webinars. Within the next couple of days, I will take the video recording of this webinar and I will publish it up there, so you can go take a look at that if you'd like. If you'd like to hear a duck quack, one of the things I just think is funny is ducks quacking. You can scan the duck quack QR code and your phone will quack like a duck. Or if you'd like to work with Argo SH&E to work on having us help you with your safety and health program, please, you can follow this other link and it will take you there. A couple other questions or comments. Del Brady says, do you have any safety program metrics or leading indicators that you found helpful in demonstrating the effectiveness of a safety program? Yes, those 5, if we go back to the, see if I can quickly jump back to the first. There's got to be some creative ways to do the measurement on this. We talked a little bit about this last month during the engagement discussion, but if these 5 pillars will help you improve your safety program, no matter how good you are in that, no matter how big or how small your company is. If you can handle employee engagement, you can teach people how to appropriately manage risk. You can communicate with each other about that risk or about things that are going on in the workplace. If you're doing inspections and you're doing observations, if you do good quality observations, then you can improve your safety program. As far as measurement of all of these things, there are a variety of different tools out there. Google is completely full of them. We at Argo have some tools that we'd be happy to share with you and work with you if you'd like to reach out to us. We can certainly work with you on how to put together some ways to measure that. But if you can focus on those 5 pillars, then you're going to improve your program effectiveness. Any other comments or questions that anybody like? You guys are all shy today. You don't want to speak in front of each other. Well, if not, I appreciate you taking your time. These are intended to be relatively short things. Please come back next month on the 4th Tuesday, and we'll talk about communication and some things that you can use communication to help drive that alignment and culture adoption. And then in May and June, we'll talk about inspections and observations. So yeah, my email again, I don't know if I have it on a site. My email is Brian, BRYAN HOGGAN at argoshe.com. So it's the same. You can get to it from one of these links here. I have an email link on there, or you can, again, it's BRYAN HOGGAN at argoshe.com. I'll put a copy of it in the chat right now. All right. Well, if there's nothing else that anybody else would like to talk about on this, then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Hopefully you guys will join us for our next thing. And again, I encourage everybody to go out to the website, argoshe.com, and jump in here. You can find your way around. You can see the previous webinars. You can sign up for the remaining 3 that will be coming up for this year. And I look forward to seeing you on a future event. Thank you.